So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Bang on 8 o'clock. I've been super excited, invited Tracey to do this webinar quite a few weeks ago. And I've been working with Tracey. We've done a few events training together. And yeah, the bonus is I just get so much inspiration and motivation from Tracey just by working with her. It's just fantastic. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to put myself on mute because I like talking. And I'm going to hand over to Tracey. I don't know whether you've got any slides or if you want to go on video.
Share.
Share.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, so welcome to Goal Setting That Works. So hopefully you can see my slide. So does it work for me? Welcome. Okay, so yeah, we're going to do some goal setting that works as opposed to writing down simply what you want. We're going to try and work with the mind to get you what you want. You'll see why you need to work with the mind, and you'll see that it's dead easy to do as well. You just need a pen and paper. So we're going to use your conscious mind, your logical mind to set your goal. Maybe you've already got a goal in mind that you want to achieve in 2020, in January, or maybe you've got something that you aren't sure of the time length on it. We're going to talk about how that goal gets communicated to your subconscious or unconscious mind. And this is the key bit, because that maximizes the goal's chances of success using the unconscious mind. And we're going to see why in just a second. So your goal setter part of the mind is your conscious mind. So the part of your mind that you're using at the moment to listen to me, to think about your goals, to think about what you want to have for your tea. It's a very logical part of the mind, very analytical. And that's perfect. But the goal getter part of the mind is your unconscious or subconscious mind. And just thinking about a goal or even just writing it down isn't quite good enough communication for the unconscious mind. Think about the unconscious mind a little bit like a 5-year-old child. So it finds a lot of words quite difficult and a series of instructions quite difficult as well. So if you can present it to your mind with pictures and sounds and feelings, not so much of the wordiness, it starts to understand what you're talking about. I'm going to do a little exercise when we've written our goals just to check that your mind actually does understand what you want, because that's also a time when you could have a little bit for some reason you could have a little bit of incongruence between the two minds. Okay, pen and paper at the ready then. So we're going to goal set. So we're just going to follow some really simple instructions so that you can set your goal out in a way that the mind is going to understand. So the first thing is to think about your date. Think about a date for the goal. Is this long term? So is it going to take you 12 months? Is it short term? Is it medium term? So you're just going to have a little think about how long it's going to take you to get that goal, and be fairly realistic about it. And the reason for this is that although you might know when you're setting goals consciously, you know that, oh, it's going to take me 2 weeks, it's going to take me 2 months, it's going to take me 2 years. Your unconscious mind doesn't know. And that's the part that's going to get the goal for us. So give the goal a date, a realistic date that you want to have achieved this by. Okay. The second thing to do is to think about where you are right now. So you might not have kind of started on your journey towards your goal, or you might have done a little bit towards it. So you just think it doesn't matter where you're up to, it's just enabling the mind to understand that you're not 99% there. You might be 1% there. And that's all it is. It's this communication. And it says there, write this as though you already have the goal and you're looking back to now. So let me explain what I mean. Let's say your goal is for mid-April 2020. So you imagine now that it's 2020 and it's April, mid-April, and you're looking back to now and you're describing in the past tense how you were. So let's say your goal maybe is to go and do a competition, and the competition is in the middle of April. So you say it's mid-April, it's 15th of April 2020, and I'm reflecting on where I was in January. And in January, I just started to do some basic groundwork towards the competition. It doesn't have to be big or flowery or lots of words or descriptions, just a little hint written in the past tense of where you are now. Okay. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Shall we move on? I'm going to give you a bit of time. I'm going to put all these or leave all of these instructions up. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to write it properly, but maybe you've had time to just jot an idea or two down. The next thing that you need to do is to make sure that when you're actually describing the goal, so I talked about it being a competition in mid-April, it's talking in positive terms. So that means you say what you want, not what you don't want. So again, thinking of the mind a little bit like this 5-year-old, if you give a 5-year-old a list of things that you want, but you also give them muddled in what you don't want, it is really difficult for the mind to sift through that. So let's not muddy the waters. What you don't want, just leave off, just ignore. Okay, so any negatives that you don't want, just leave them out. All the positives that you do want, put those in. And again, we're writing it as though it's already been achieved. We've already got the goal. So I'm already writing after I've done my mid-April competition. So I say, you know, I've done my competition. I've been there. I entered. I got my red rosette, whatever I wanted, but I'm saying it in the past tense as though I've already got it. So I'll give you a few moments just to have a little think about that one. Okay, so as I say, I'll give you more time to put all of this together in a few moments, but as long as you've got the bare bones, that's absolutely fine. When you're describing your goal, say what you're going to see, what you're going to hear, what you're going to feel. So you're making it kind of sensory, not just a kind of visualization, but also what, when we're saying here, it could be hearing footfall, hearing your own self-chatter, your own internal voice. You could be hearing a friend saying, well done, fabulous. What you're going to feel is going to be fantastic, isn't it? It's going to be confident. It's going to be joyful. And if relevant, maybe what you touch or smell or taste. But for many goals, those aren't relevant. But if there is something that you're touching, like the feel of the reins, you know, the feel of your new saddle, smells around you, the tastes, put those in. But as I say, most people see, hear and feel is plenty. So you're making it really sensory, because the unconscious mind loves that. Not only does it love a picture, it loves it to have lots of senses attached to it as well. So make this as compelling and attractive as you can, so that the mind just can't help itself. It's got to chase after your goal.
Stay and gain longer on the new Google Pixel 4 with adaptive battery. It charges fast and lasts.
Okay, let's have a look at the next ones. So know your first step. So something really easy and achievable. It could be something in your training. It can be anything at all, but it's nice and easy for you to be able to do. It's something that you could do in 30 minutes. It's just setting you on your way. Have a little think about those. Okay, we're nearly there, folks. 2 more steps. So, next one. Do you need any resources? So, do you need to go and get some training? Do you need to get an instructor? Do you need to hire somewhere? Do you need any new tack or kit? Maybe you don't need anything at all. Maybe everything is there. It's simply the practice and the getting going. So if you need resources, you can jot them down, but if you don't need any, that's fine. You can just leave that. Okay. And I'm just going to do number 7, then I'll give you a few moments just to have a little look over your goal and add to it if you need to do. How will you know that you've got your goal? So what will be that moment when you know you've got it, so that your mind knows to stop? So when I did my competition, then I suppose my example, I would know that I'd got my goal when I actually completed the competition. So I would have a visualization of finishing the competition and being on a real high. So think about, how will you know when you've got it? Are you going for some kind of certification? So you'll need a certificate. Are you going for some kind of, do you just want to move on up so you'll be able to do the cantering or do the hacking or whatever it is? How will you know when you've got it? Okay. So if I just give you a few more moments in case you need to have a little look over those, putting in your seeing sights and what you're hearing, what you're feeling. Make sure you know the first step. How will you know you've got it? Nice and positive, looking from the future back to now.
Okay, cool.
Just give you a couple of minutes just in case you need to put finishing touches to it. And then we're going to just find out whether your mind really understands what you want. And if your mind doesn't understand, then we can just do some little tweaks. Okay, so a couple more seconds if you need any. Okay, so even if you've not managed to write it down, as long as you've got it in your head, that's what counts. So let's have a little look how we can check that the mind, the unconscious mind, actually knows what you want. So we're going to ask some questions. Okay, so before we ask the questions, I want you to have a think about that last piece of the jigsaw that we were talking about, that moment when you know you've got your goal. And when you think about that, do you have a picture in your mind? Don't worry about it being, you know, a superb photograph kind of picture. An impression is fine. So having a picture in your mind of you getting that goal and you achieving it. And when you've got that picture, what I want you to do is, I'm going to ask you the question, but I don't want you to answer the question. I know that sounds weird, but I want you to tell me, or I want you to write down what happens to the picture, how it changes. So for instance, it may get brighter or darker, or maybe the picture disappears, or maybe it gets bigger or smaller. Maybe nothing happens. So all I want you to do is to just write down 1 to 7 in the margin. We're just going to have 7 questions. You're concentrating on that picture of getting your goal. And you're just going to write down if the picture changes. If it doesn't change, that's fine. No problem at all. Just leave the question blank. Okay, so you're going to write down your word. So have that picture in your mind. So the first one, does your goal have a date? So rather than answering the question, does the picture change in any way? Does your goal have a date? Just write your word down. See if your mind gives you a word. See if the picture changes. Okay, don't worry if it doesn't. That's absolutely fine. Let's look at question number 2. Same again. Where are you up to now? So when I mention that question, how does the picture change, if at all? Where are you up to now? Question number 3. What specifically do you want? What specifically do you want? Question number 4. What will you see, hear, feel, and maybe touch, taste and smell when you have it? What will you see, hear and feel when you have it? Just write down how the picture changes, if it changes. Number 5, what's the first step? Just write down how the picture changes. What's the first step? Number 6, what resources are needed, if any? What resources are needed, if any? Just writing down how the picture changes, if it does. And the last question, how will you know when you've got it? How will you know when you've got the goal? How does the picture change? How will you know when you've got the goal? Okay, so you should have a maximum of 7 words. Maybe you haven't got any words and that's fine. Maybe you have got 7 or you've got fewer than 7. Doesn't matter. We're going to have a look at what those words actually mean. So these words are to help you alter the goal if necessary. So if you have a word that you consider is negative and it's your meaning of it, then that means on that question, your mind needs a little bit more detail. I'll flick up the questions again in just a sec. If you've got a positive word, your unconscious mind knows exactly what you mean. And if you've got no word or you've got a neutral word, then your unconscious mind is on board with it as well. So it's just the things that you would think are negative, just a negative word. So for instance, if you find that darker is a negative word, just circle that question. We'll have a look at what it is, where you need to add a little bit more detail. So those are the questions that we had. Just have a little look at the question itself now, where you've got the negative word, and add a little bit more detail if necessary. It just means your mind is a bit confused. It's not really sure what you want. So it just needs a little bit more detail adding to it, so it's fully on board. So take a couple of minutes to do that. Just tweak your goal to make it really understandable to the unconscious mind. So if you've got any that you are wondering about, wondering why you need detail, because it's very clear to you what you mean, it could simply mean that your unconscious mind is questioning the time frame, questioning where you're up to now, whether you've put enough specificity into it, whether you know what the first step is clearly and specifically. It's questioning maybe if you do need those resources. Maybe you said I don't need any, and then it's gone, I think you do. I think you need a few lessons, or I think you need to go out and do a bit more schooling, or whatever it is. How will you know that you've got it if you've got that as a negative word? It might just be that the visualization just needs maybe a bit more feeling with it. So it's just tweaking so that you have it in the language, if you like, of the unconscious mind. So I'll just give you a couple more seconds. If you don't get time to write it, at least make sure you've thought it, you've thought the detail, because that's just as good. Okay, so hopefully now we've got a goal that the conscious mind really wants and is really compelling, and we've got a goal that the unconscious mind understands and is ready to go and get it for you. So the last little thing, which is a very special step, we're going to install that goal into your unconscious mind so that it knows with absolute clarity what you want. So let's have a little go at this. We're going to use something called a timeline. A timeline is a line that represents your life and the present. And to one side of you, you've got a past.
I've lost your voice.
Ooh,
Yeah, we've lost.
I think the connection dropped.
I think your connection's dropped.
For whatever reason. Okay, there we go, back again.
Back, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a timeline. We've got past, present and future on there. We're going to use the timeline in just a moment to install that goal into the future. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do now, if this makes it more vivid and intense, if you close your eyes, then close your eyes. Otherwise, you might just want to stare into space. I want you to get back to that visualization of that last step when you know you've got your goal. Okay? I want you to think about that picture. And as you're thinking about that picture, I want you to think whether if you turned up the brightness of the picture, that would make it even more compelling. And if it does, go ahead and turn it up. If it doesn't, keep it the same. What about things like the colours? Would you like it more colourful? Does that make it more compelling, more real? If it does, make it more colourful. Otherwise, keep it as it is. What about subduing the colours? Does that make it seem more real? So we're just tweaking the picture in terms of what it looks like. How about the focus? If you made it really sharp, would that make it more real? Or more defocused? or certain parts of it defocused and other parts of it focused. Just play around till this picture not only is compelling, but feels very real. What about the sounds? Add some sounds in to make it more real if you want to do, or have silence if that feels more like reality too. The last thing to do is to put some feelings into it. The positivity, the happiness, the success, the motivation, the determination, all these massively powerful, positive feelings. So as you're seeing the picture, layer on these wonderful feelings as well. So it looks great, it looks fabulous this, and it feels fabulous too. Now what I want you to do is to step out of the picture so that you're looking at yourself. Okay, and then I want you to have that picture maybe shrink a little bit so that it looks a little bit like a photo, or it's on a piece of paper, and you can fold up the piece of paper or the photo and you can put it into your pocket, or you can just tuck it under your arm. And we're going to take this picture out onto your timeline. So imagine now your timeline with your past, present and future, and you're sitting in the present with your highly compelling goal. I want you to float up above now, and I want you to look out towards the future side of the timeline. I want you to feel as though now, where you are, floating above the timeline, that you can energize this picture. So almost breathe life into it. So if you want to do, you can do some deep breaths, 4 deep breaths, and feel as though you are giving it some kind of life. Okay, if you don't want to do that, you could just imagine forcing energy, forcing some kind of compelling force into it. Okay. Now float out into the future above your timeline. I want you to float to that date you've put on the timeline, on the goal. Okay, now this obviously isn't a precise science. You're doing it very much by estimation, intuition. So there is no getting it wrong. If the goal's next week, it's not going to be floating out very much. If it's a year, you need to float out a little bit further. But just as best you can, find that date on the timeline that you put for your goal. Hover above that date. And now what I want you to do is to let go of that picture. So take it out of your pocket, take it from under your arm, and allow it to float down into that precise place, that date on your timeline. And you may see it float gently like a feather, slowly, or it may really sink downwards really rapidly and insert itself into just the right place. You may, as you look down, notice things changing or have a feeling of things changing on your timeline, and that events that are in the future between now and your goal are reevaluating themselves. So some people see ripples in the timeline, or waves, or lights. Some people feel that there's something going on down there. So however you do it, even if you don't really sense that anything's changing in the timeline, it's perfect for you and your mind. So enjoy that goal being inserted and installed into your unconscious mind on that timeline. Enjoy all the events reevaluating themselves. And then start to float back to now. And when you get back to now, float down into your timeline and come back to reality. So there you have it. You have written a goal in the language that the unconscious mind understands. You have tweaked it so that the unconscious mind really understands what you want, doesn't have a superficial understanding, it's really clear. And you've installed it into your mind using the timeline. Okay. So in doing that, because we've now engaged the goal getting part of the mind, this is going to have so much more chance of success, and so that the goal is achieved. So I hope you enjoyed goal setting with a bit of a difference, using a little bit of timeline therapy. And I hope you'll let me or Julia know how you get on, how the goal goes. Sometimes you find that people get the goal way ahead of the date that they actually chose. And some people, it might just take a few more weeks or a few more months, depending on the size of the goal. But as long as you are working with your unconscious mind will work with you and will flag up opportunities that perhaps you didn't notice before, and will really spur you on to getting your goal. So thanks ever so much, folks, for listening tonight. That was really, really good. Thank you so much for inviting me, Julia.
No, thank you. That's been great.
You're welcome, Tracey. That is, I love. I know I've heard it all before, and it's just absolutely fantastic and magical, and I love it. So, does anybody have any questions for Tracey whilst we're still here?
No
question, Julia.
Okay, so I've got all your details from your registration. If you haven't already got Tracey's details, I can share Tracey's website and Facebook. And as we both said, this isn't about a sales pitch. This is about sharing our passion for you as riders to be able to succeed. And succeed for me isn't about competition. It's about enjoying your horse, enjoying the relationship and having fun. I personally decided in the last 12 months that I do not want to compete. I will not compete. And it was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I just go out there and have fun with my horse, and it's the best decision I ever made. So it's really, it's really powerful stuff. So hope you've all got something really good and meaty to take away. As Tracey says, keep in touch and let us know how you're getting on. To add to that, I have recorded, hopefully technology has succeeded, and I have managed to record the session. So if you want a refresher, the recording will be available, so you can go back and do it again and again.
Yeah, we'll record in. Yeah.
I will, I'll upload it to, I'll probably upload it, I'll check with Tracey first, either on one of our, or both of our websites and or YouTube or so whatever, and I'll email you all the links so you've got access to it. Wherever it'll be publicly available, and probably on Facebook as well. I'll chat with Tracey to check where we're gonna.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no problem.
And yeah, so have fun, enjoy, and keep us updated with your progress.
Definitely.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.